are back and we're jumping right into our second conversation today, and we are going to be speaking all about social workers. And here to join us for that discussion, we have with us Fermin Olivera, who is a social work lecturer from the University of Belize, as well as Azalia Larrieu, who is also a social work lecturer from the University of Belize. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you with us. So, of course, we're talking about the importance of the work that social workers do. Perhaps we can just sort of start off the discussion by getting your, let's say, definition for our viewers of what a social worker is and what work that they do.
All right. The definition of social work is very broad, and we're going to discuss that a little bit today. But one thing that you must know if you're interested in the social work profession is to know that it is a helping profession, first off. And when we say helping profession, it means that we're there to guide individuals through their daily tasks, basically, in the environment that they're in. So whether they're going through a difficult time or whether they're simply going through a normal developmental stage, but we're there to guide them through that. And that's for the most simplistic definition that I can, state. But beyond that, there's so much about social work, and we work in a wide variety of fields as well. That it is very, you may work in a school, you can work with hospitals. Right now, through the current pandemic, we work with, on a public health basis.
Yeah, I think that's one of the more one of the things that a lot of people don't know about social work. The first inclination when we think of a social work, well, it's human services, specifically child protection services, that comes to mind. But as you're getting into it, there's so many different fields where social workers are needed and in fact are working. Let me talk about the Belize landscape for a minute, because we have had, you're both lecturers at the University of Belize. We've had a social work degree program for a while now, and it seems to be popular. You keep on going. So we have social workers graduating, but do we have enough employed in the country?
Okay. Well, good morning.
Morning.
Let me quickly just kind of state the what has us here. In March this year, we wanted to celebrate International Social Work Day. So, COVID-19 came and it did a number on that and on many things, as we all know. So do we have enough social workers? First of all, I think as Azalia was sharing, social work is not a well-known profession. And I think many times when we do hear about them, it's in small contexts and in some very narrow views.
Yeah.
But the reality is that social workers can be a very valuable human resource for the country of Belize. We do not have enough. We cannot meet the demands that is out there. And yes, social workers can fit into so many areas wherever you have people, and people that you want to help, and people that are in need. So to answer your question, just simply, we do not have enough social workers to meet our current demands. At least that is as best as we know.
Yeah.
That reality is for Belize.
Yeah. Now, when you look at the students that enter the program, Azalia said very clearly, it is a helping profession. How many of the students do you think grasp the enormity and the challenges of this type of work?
Marlene, I believe that is very, as they enter, they're very limited to the understanding of the social work profession.
Yeah.
And mainly, some of them would enter, and that would go back to those myths that we would like to debunk today.
Yes.
And to insert the facts that we have. And one of the main one, as you had rightly said, is that social workers are all working with the government, or social workers are all working with human service. So some of them would come in and say, I want a job with human service department, so I want to do this degree. And when they get to understand that social workers have a wide career options, that it's not just working with the human service. We have social workers on different levels of the systems that we refer to. And those are things like the micro system, the meso system, and the macro system. And, when they get to that, maybe like fourth year, where they're doing social work in a macro system with communities, social work with policy, they're like, wow, I didn't know this was what social work is about. I currently had a student both students that were doing internship, and we were doing internship there with RED. And they at first came to me. Now we have 2 internship programs specifically. And the first one is the micro program, in which they would work with directly with clients and families. The second internship, it's more communities. So it's on that macro level, working with communities, policies, administration, for example. And they came to me and said, but there's no social worker at RED. And I'm like, yeah, and they're like, we're doing these programs, and we're doing program development. And I'm like, that's exactly what social workers do on a macro level. They were working on campaigns, and they actually had a little fair as well at University of Belize Business Campus, and they were advocating, they were promoting social justice. And I had to really zoom that in for them. So that's the first myth. The second myth is that social workers don't do therapy. And a lot of people would say, oh, I need to go do a counseling. I'm just doing this and I'm going into counseling, until they really grasp that, yes, social workers do provide therapy, and they do psychotherapy as well. So we have, again, 2 levels of that. And the first is the bachelor's level, which they are able to do casework, assessments, they're able to do evaluation, self-care plans for individuals as well. And then we have the master's level. And at the master's level, you're able to do more clinical work. So working directly with clients, doing more psychotherapy. So,
Azalia, if I may, Marlene, Azalia, along the lines of the transforming type of education, it takes a little while, to be honest with you, for social workers to understand the scope and the significance of social work education. The idea that social work is just an easy subject, you will quickly find out that that is not the case. Social work challenges the person at the very core. It challenges your belief. It presents you with different lenses to view the world. So social workers, in the transforming process of education, it can be a scary thing. Undoubtedly, social work education will change the life of that social worker. We grew up in an environment where we have all these ideas, these cute ideas, sexy little ideas of what is. The reality is that to be able to help and empathize and look at the population we serve, which is really those populations many times in the margins of society, so it takes deep convictions to be able to serve that client group. So yes, social work education can be a very powerful, transforming type of experience.
It sounds so much like teachers. Sorry, it sounds so much like teachers that you have to know that you want to do it. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask a little bit more about the work, because as Azalia had mentioned, the micro and the macro levels. So I was actually a bit interested to learn a little bit more about what sort of the specific work is done on either level, because I think for a lot of our viewers who perhaps were still under the assumption that it was still just working with, you know, children or whatever, but it does have many different facets. So I'm wondering, what's the difference between the micro and macro, and two, what are some of the specific things that are done on either level?
All right. The micro level, the work that, remember, our focus is to enhance human well-being, which really means, hey, we want to help people.
Yeah.
So that can happen at the individual level, at the individual level with one person, and also the individual level would also be with families. So
Yeah.
we can work with individuals and families, scope out what is happening, and chart ways of how it is possible to help them. Central to our practice is empowerment. It's kind of close to the idea that, you know, instead of giving you fishes, and we do give fish, we do give pantry, we do give people these basic things that many times are necessary, but it's also about empowerment. Gavin and Marlene has come on stream, I would say, for not longer than 10 years ago. Social work was welfare, was where, you know, you're helping,
Yeah.
you're having these crumbs and crusts for people, and it transformed to empowerment, and that posed a big challenge for us, for the profession, but it also elevated the profession to where we're looking at the long-term sustainability and viability and the resiliency of people. So we do things at the individual. Let me give you an individual. People can have conflicts, or let me put it in context. People might be very stressed out with the coronavirus, having
Yeah.
to stay home. Can a social worker engage someone that's going through some type of a distress to help them? Yes, we have many tools in our little skill sets that, you know, we can put up there and definitely help that individual. The same would be true for our family. Then we have groups of people, like, so we can find groups like at the school systems, whether it be a class or as a system itself. Social workers can do many things within those group systems to make those experiences better, and to improve the experiences for maybe students that are not doing so well.
Yeah.
For maybe those group systems that are experiencing issues, say with crime and maybe violence within the compound. There are many things that social workers could do there with those group systems. And of course, as Azalia talked about at the macro, the policy, we can look at, for example, you look at policies that impact the nation. This is not many times easily observable, but policies in a large, I tend to be a firm believer that if our country is too steep in poverty, I have to look at policies that are contributing to that fact. Social workers tend to at the macro level, look at the bigger dimension and how these rules are affecting the lives of our everyday person. So
Yeah.
that's social work at a macro level, at a planning level. Could we come up with better laws and better policies to help people? Of course, I would be the first to have to accept that it's in this regard we have many deficiencies, and of course it ripples through the nation and eventually affects people on the ground. So simplistically, social work at the micro, meso, and macro practice.
Right. And Fermin, if I can add there as well, under each one of these levels, what we do is what we call the plan change process. And in doing that, we identify vulnerable individuals, populations. We identify problems within an individual's life, and we also assess those problems. With that, we're able to create interventions, and again, the last one would be evaluations. So it is more to it than, for example, let me on the community level.
Yeah.
I want to do a feeding program. There is more to it than I'm going to start a feeding program. I'm going to feed 20 children,
Yeah.
right? It entails a lot more than that because we want to do it effectively. We want to be able to evaluate our services. And it's the same thing on a micro level. with families and individuals.
Yeah.
On a meso level, and the Fermin didn't touch on that one, but in addition to schools, we also have self-help groups. So substance abuse, for example, have a lot, the AA working with different substance abuse, alcohol, and so forth. So it is very wide, but it's identify, assess, evaluate, and doing an intervention as well.
So, I think it clearly shows just the range of work that someone who studies social work can be able to employ. Tell me a bit more, because you were saying that there are quite a bit of misconceptions that people have about the profession. Tell me about some of the other things that people tend to believe but are just not quite so.
Let me just mention too, if I may, before Azalia takes over. She has kept stock of this. One of the misconceptions is that social work is not a well-paid profession. Well, to some extent, that's probably true in Belize. I have to admit it. In comparison to other professions of equal degree level, social workers tend to get paid less. That's true here, but that is not true in other parts of the world. Social workers are highly respected, highly regarded, and well paid. So that is one misconception, which for us, regrettably, it is true. There is the misconception that anybody can be a social worker. Well, anybody can probably do some aspects of helping, yes, but social work is a profession. It has a set of professional values, a set of, it is a full-blown profession by definition and in practice. So just those two on my end.
And also, your presence also addresses the other one, that it's only females who are social workers.
Right. And and the reality is that social work is still a heavily female dominated profession. And that opens room that's we have recognized the need for social workers from the time I was with the public service. We need males in the profession. There's so many areas where they would be a good fit for the populations we want to serve. So there we go. Yes, Marlene.
I think the large part of that, Marlene, is the fact that comes another myth, and that's the fact that the myth is that people are saying out there, hey, I just need to have a kind heart, and to help people. And no, and our gender norms bringing about that again is that only females can care. Males don't do that, but social work is more than just that. It's more than just having that kind heart. It's being able to help people and to help people effectively. It's being able to be a leader and to navigate through tough situations. Sometimes we get students that say, this is my religion and I just want to pass it on. That's why I'm doing social work. And they get a very rude awakening, as what Fermin had mentioned, because it is not that. We have to respect the individual, and with that comes self-determination of that individual. So we're not giving advice. That's the other one, where they come and they say things like, I'm so good with giving advice to my friends. But it's not that. We do follow a set of ethics, and we do follow a set of competences and practice behaviors that are needed for the profession.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that one of the things that you said, Fermin, was looking at whether or not it's going to be a high-paying profession. But what about demand? You said there aren't enough people employed as social workers in Belize, but I don't know if that's the same as saying that there is a demand.
I think, to our shame, we haven't done such a good job at promoting the profession. And of course, that's part of the reason why we are here. people have this very narrow view of what a social worker can do. For example, I was thinking, for example, you have these associations up north, these sugar associations
Yeah.
that have a commitment to the welfare of the sugar producers, the cane farmers. That group of people, they're going through hardship, their kids. We see some of the data happening.
Yeah.
Could it be a good place to employ a full-time social worker to enhance some of the work that they need to do? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yes, I think because we're not very recognized at our utility, at the skill set that we bring, um, people don't consider us for those positions. They think that this is only limited to the welfare response, like being part of the Ministry of Human Development. No, that's an important part, but it's a very limited area of where social work one-on-one can display its value to any HR, to any human resource department in order to promote the welfare of the people they serve. You see, social workers look at people as the ends in themselves. We tend to see we want to be able to help workers to do well if they're having issues and challenges. I have done sessions for private companies, large companies, to get in and to do so we to do things. It's at many levels. So social workers definitely can play a role. We need to, I think, the business and the business community, or the, you know,
Yeah. That they
in other
can
words, is
benefit.
that they
Yeah.
can benefit from employing social workers to be a fundamental and integral part of their
Even
human
if
resource operations.
I was just going to say, in your HR department, to help people in their workplace, to help people from the workplace with whatever they're going through. But
Right.
let me ask this
Right,
question.
Marlene. I wanted to just mention as well on that. We have most of the time in corporate companies, our employees are seen as an asset. We invest in our employees, and with that comes like continued education, for example. With that comes helping that employee to go through, maybe they're having difficulty with their children, behavioral issues, and how does that affect the other members of the family. So when we do talk about demand, you just simply have to look at all the social problems that are happening today in our country. The domestic violence or rate of suicide. We're looking at
Substance
truancy in
abuse.
children. We're looking at the nourishment of newborns. When you look at that as well, we just had in the news the the incident that a baby was found, right? So that is where you look at and you say, do we need social workers? We are there to work within these areas. So
And help to
would
find
say that-
solutions.
And to
Absolutely.
find,
Yeah. So let me ask
Yeah.
you, what are your and you can talk in general or you can talk personally. What are the challenges of this type of work?
That's a good one. The challenges. Well, the, you know what? I don't. There are many. I mean, think about who we work with. We work with the people most in need, people that are hurting.
Yeah.
Doing this work, you hardly meet somebody that's all fully up there and all bubbly and stuff. You face people that are having issues, so it can wear on you over time. Let me be the first to recognize that social workers can be terrible enablers. Enablers meaning at a macro level, we work so hard and we allow poor systems to continue to function. There is a price to pay when you start to not care for yourself, when you start to be having to deal with the maybe the negativity, the enabling environment. It raises the stress on us. Our lives can become unmanageable pretty quick, and I think at least from the best I know, we see lots of health issues. Social workers, obesity is one, pick up a lot of weight. Because many times, I'll tell you, I was in the public service. There's good and bad stuff that happens,
Yeah.
and in any sector where you work, if the environment is not conducive, social workers can go on guilt trips too, you know.
Yeah.
We're really turning the wheels, working out there. And if you don't have a good healthcare plan for you, if you're not managing the levels of stress that will come in your direction, you will soon find out that you will be burnt out.
Yeah.
Long before this happens, let me tell you, I suspect that I suspect that we have lots of people that are already burnt out in a system. When that has happened, you are of little uh, value. You're not very effective with doing the tremendous work that you need to be done, that needs to be done. We really are those tools. We are that instrument for change. And many times in the course of this journey, the amount of stress and pressure that you have to bear can overwhelm us. So I have to think that at least on a personal note, and having done social work for 20 years or more in my life, I was glad to escape, to come out. I needed that break, otherwise you collapse at the weight of the
Yeah.
burden that you have to bear many times.
And I'm wondering also, in terms of the Belize situation, is another, or you can tell me, is it also a challenge for social workers to have the amount of resources that they need to enable them to do the work that they do in at any sort of level? Is resources
The-
also an issue?
I can only speak to the time when I was, say, with the Ministry of Human Development. Even then, which is, I don't know, probably close to 15 years now since I left. The caseload, the number of cases that social workers, the number of cases that I assigned to my workers, I knew they were very, very, very high even at that time. The ballpark figure when it comes to case management for a social worker is around 20. Anytime you exceeded that number, Superman, Superwoman, they won't be able to do the job. It's a fool's thought to think that you can just deal with any amount or volumes of work. There are standards that guide our practice, and for you to be effective. Now, what happens if you have few social workers? Is it possible for a social worker to have 50 cases or 60 cases or seven? I want to think that that is impossible. But let me point out there, if you have as a social worker 50 cases in, say, case management, they're killing you. And you will soon pass away and another one will come to replace that. So we knew, being part of that system, that there was so much need for more workers. Actually, let me tell you, Gavin and Marlene, when I was there, the numbers of trained social workers were a minority.
Yeah.
I think we started training. That's part of what grew into real support for the University of Belize social work program. So yes, it's food for thought. I do not know what the data is, but that's one of the pitfalls that we can carry the load on more work. We say yes we can, and yes we can, and eventually we just fall through the cracks along with everybody else that we are carrying.
And
We
that's
need more. Go ahead, Mark.
No, I was going to say that's such a great perspective from the social worker side, because I know I've thought about that. We've had this conversation with Human Services before, because then from the client standpoint, these are people. If it's an intervention, if it's a child protection issue, for example, you're meeting people in very terrible circumstances, and if you have 50 cases to manage, to follow up on, to keep in touch with, things and people fall through the cracks, and those are lives that are being impacted.
Yeah.
I think, Marlene, to that brings about the challenges of social work, but also because we're humans. We're humans, just like they are humans, and that is good and it's bad. Yeah. But what we prepare our students for when they come into the social work program, they do a lot of self-reflection. They also learn a lot about trauma, vicarious trauma, right? Also called secondary trauma. So they have the tools that are necessary They learn about time management. They learn about how to take care of themselves first before someone else. So those are a lot of the techniques that they learn to become resilient to what they will be expected to do in the social work field. So definitely it is challenges. Resources a lot of the time becomes a challenge, and that's because of financial situations. And I think it's not until we really understand the importance of social work that our country will develop. Because if we are the ones helping the most vulnerable population, in order for our country to flourish, we need to be able to have tax-paying citizens. And we're not going to have tax-paying citizens if we don't have social workers there working and helping the vulnerable population.
And just lastly, as we close it all off, the rewards. What makes you so committed to this profession?
Let me close off, well, at least my little piece. I have done this 20 so many years. If somebody was to ask me, can I do it again, would you do it again? In a heartbeat. There is nothing that comes so close to being so rewarding as to being able to see the change that is possible in people that are hurting and suffering. It's the closest thing that I know of what miracles look like. To be able to help someone transform and to change their lives for their own betterment. Hey, it's a true gift and one that I consider myself very fortunate. I would do all this all over again.
Nice. And for you, Azalia?
Right, that Fermin, I'm on that same path. It's social work is it's not a job only. It is a calling to help others. With that, we push ourselves to places we don't think we should be. We put ourselves in that situation with the mere fact of helping, creating change, of transforming lives. And I have my own psychotherapy counseling as well going on, and what I see there is the change in individuals when they sit across you and they say, I can now see clearly what you're talking about. And that is what it warms your heart. Like, I did this, you helped me to see that. Yeah. And most of the time we would just, if you did it, you did it. I didn't do it, you did it. But that definitely is my reward.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Of course, we do know that you're both lecturers at the University of Belize, because they do have their social work program, and people can definitely consider it and put it all into context after today's conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take a break now, and when we come back,
we are going to be speaking with dancer and Broadway artist Jamie Thompson, so please stay tuned.